Welcome back, I'm Roller Coaster, that's right, that's my corny name, and today we're going to be counting down the top 15 floorless coasters, that's right, I spent a whole lot of time making this slideshow here for you, so let's get started here with the only floorless that hasn't opened yet, Patriot. We can pretty much assume that this is going to be the worst floorless, sadly. Yep, it opened as a stand-up coaster in 1991, as you all probably know. This year it's getting its floorless conversion into a floorless coaster, receiving floorless trains, getting a re-theme, recoloring, as you can see here. Used to be purple and yellow colors, now it's a nice blue and white. Looks pretty good. Anyway, I said, small floorless coaster. It's 91 feet tall, pretty small for a B&M. Underwhelming drop. It's like you only go 45 miles per hour in that loop. It's not very forceful either. The corkscrew, might I add, has some snap to it apparently. I've read, and there's also airtime. It is a brake run, but that's all it's really got going for it. Not a whole lot to be excited for. I'm sure that airtime isn't very crazy. So if you watch the point of view, it doesn't look that great. So yeah, that's Patriot. Next up is Daemonen, a somewhat newer B&M. It's the smallest floorless currently operating. It's a foot taller than Patriot, but it's definitely very, very short. The layout is pretty weird. There's a helix before the actual drop. I mean, you go kind of quick through the helix, but yeah, that isn't the actual drop. And then you drop, do a loop, Daemonen's jersey roll, turns, and breaks. That's literally it. It's a pretty darn short ride. The actual ride after the drop is like 20-25 seconds, so definitely shorter than Patriot even, but because it's newer, it's smoother. The zero roll looks to have some nice whip to it, probably. That's all I really got. And also the setting of this one, as you can see from this picture, looks really, really nice. In that Chinese-themed area, just diving in and out of the trees, and looks pretty good. Anyway, next up's Insane Speed, a coaster that you probably haven't heard of before. It's at that park in Taiwan, and basically the next three B&Ms have a pretty similar layout to each other. This one does not have the zero roll that the next ones will have. It's just a loop, a dive loop. You can kind of follow the layout from here. After the dive loop, you kind of soar up into a turn that goes through the loop, interlocking corkscrews, and a helix. Kind of a shorter ride, but it's alright. Probably a little bit forceful, but almost the entire ride is an inversion, so there's not much to really say here. Not much airtime or anything. So yeah, just a fun coaster. It's definitely got more to it than Daemonen though. So, and then there's Batman: The Dark Knight at Six Flags New England, which yes, I believe it is the worst floorless in the United States. It's definitely smoother than another one we'll talk about, but which is a pretty controversial one. Anyway, this is the standard layout: loop, dive, loop, and front to loop and a turn, which you can see in this picture. The zero roll, interlocking corkscrews, helix. So it's a pretty short ride, only like I want to say 35 seconds maybe after the drop. Yeah, it's just a lot of inversions really. The helix doesn't look too intense. It's just a lot of fun inversions is all it is. A nice smooth B&M. Next up's Nitro. This is another one you probably haven't heard of. It's at Adlabs Imagica in India. It does a loop and then a dive loop, so it changes up the order there, I think, right? Because this one does the loop. No, it doesn't. Okay, never mind. Then it throws the loop in the turn, then the zero roll. So it is the same layout. It's the same layout. But it is taller actually. Wait. Well, I'm right. Okay, just making sure there. Okay. Yeah, this is weird, man. It's taller and longer than Batman. There's no pre-drop, which makes for probably some airtime on that drop, as you can see there, because these ones have the little pre-drop and then it goes into that twisting drop. And it looks more intense. It's taller than Batman, so it looks like that you might pull some using the loop and maybe the zero roll, which is nice. So that's Nitro. And then the next one, this is a controversial one. I have rode this one. Yeah. It was alright. Okay, so the layout's pretty unique. Let's talk about it here. So there's a loop, which is kind of forceful. The entrance into the loop's pretty forceful. The exit is alright too. And then it begins to kind of die down from there. You got a forceless dive loop. I mean, dive loops are generally forceless inversions. There's this weird kind of filler element. It's just this weird turnaround. And then there's an awesome incline loop. As you know, I made a video on the incline loop because what a cool element, am I right? You twist it into the mid-course brake run. And then after that, it's very boring. The ride is incredibly boring. It's just some forceless turns and erratically corkscrews the rest of the ride. So it's definitely weaker than the interlocking corkscrews and the helixes found on the other second halves of these Floorlesses, but it's the first one with a mid-course brake run, so there's that. Next one does not have a mid-course brake run, which is great. Really, it's the same layout as Nitro and Batman, except this one does an Immelman instead of the corkscrews. And there's an airtime hill. That's right. It's got some great ejector air. I've seen the point of views of the rider cams. It looks like probably the best ejector air on a B&M, better than all the hypers with those little hills, and the Leviathan I think has one. Yeah, it's really great. It's a great view of the ocean from the coaster. I've heard it's a little bit rattly and rough, but it didn't really look like it from the point of view. So it looks like a great ride. Yeah. Except Hydra. This one's on my personal bucket list of coasters to ride. It looks really, really fun, especially that Heartline roll out of the station, which is called the JoJo roll, because it's the name of an old ride operator at the park. Yeah, anyway, very unique layout. It's very, very unique. No hose coasters, anything like this for sure. See, obviously there's the JoJo roll out of the station. There's no pre-drop in this one, and it's also a straight down drop, so you get some nice airtime in the back row, I'm sure. Then there's a nice incline dive loop, which has a little hang time. A nice kind of spread out 0-0 roll, so there's not going to be any whip or forces to it, but you're definitely kind of feel some hang time, and you really feel like you're upside down because it goes through it kind of slowly. And then pictured here is that slow corkscrew, which very big, very wide. These coaster elements are very strangely shaped. And there's another interesting element, the Cobra roll, which is like kind of stretched out, like they took the corkscrew elements and just kind of pulled them out. Yeah, and then after that you got kind of an airtime turn, and then into a real airtime hill, which has a little bit of floater air. Nothing crazy, but still a good element. And then you got a corkscrew, some turns, and that's the ride. So yeah. All right, and yeah, obviously there's no block break, so the pacing's going to be pretty good. And this is the same thing with most of these. This one's kind of a bigger one. Well, it's actually not as big as this one, believe it or not, but I feel like it does a little more. Anyway, next up is Dominator. This one is also controversial. Some even say this is the best Floorless just because, it does a little more. But it actually does a little less if you ask me. It's only got 5 inversions. Pardon me, I got a cough here. Really, after the loop, you go through some turns, which it's just kind of filler, I feel like. You just kind of do some turns. There might be some laterals in them, but that doesn't matter. You don't really want laterals on a B&M. And then there's a Cobra roll, which looks fine and fun, kind of forceful in the entrance and exit. And then I've heard that there's airtime going into, I think it's into the final brake run and coming out of the mid-course brake run. Yeah. And I've heard the corkscrews, the interlocking corkscrews are rattly, which means that, it's just not the most solid of the Floorless coasters, even though it's the longest one. But that's just because it does a lot of turns and boring stuff. There is a helix, but that doesn't look like anything too crazy. But that's just my opinion. I'm not really seeing why this would be called the best Floorless by anybody, but I don't know. And next up, Scream. I've ridden this one. This is before they got the 2015 repaint to orange and blue. It's got the same layout as a coaster you'll see coming up soon. It's got a loop, a dive loop, 0-0 roll, Cobra roll, interlocking corkscrews, which means 7 inversions, most on this list so far. Actually, well, Hydra had 7, but they were weird inversions. So this one, yeah, I already listed those. It's pretty much just all inversions. That's the entire ride. I think there's like 1 half helix, but it wasn't anything too intense. I found it to be a little rattly, had a little bit of head bagging, but nothing bad, nothing compared to Rougarou. I did not like that thing. But it was pretty forceful. I actually feel like it was more forceful than another coaster on this list that I've ridden. That's just me. I might have just not noticed it on another one. So yeah, I feel like this was a forceful ride, but it was a little rattly. That's what I gotta say. Next up's Medusa. This one, it's interesting. It's another 7 looping Floorless coaster at Discovery Kingdom. It's a pretty unique layout actually because it's got that sea serpent roll instead of the Cobra roll. It's where it does a half loop a corkscrew on another corkscrew, but like going towards the same direction, and then another half a loop. So it looks kind of like a sea serpent if you look at a picture. So yeah, there's that, and then you got two corkscrews that are not interlocking. Pretty crazy. Yeah. I guess it has some good pacing. I don't know. I mean, up until the mid-course break run, it looks pretty good. And it barely even slows you down too. You get some nice whip kind of pulling out of the mid-course break run, so that's nice. And it looks just fine. Pretty much an average intensity, a nice big Floorless coaster. You know, that's all there is to say. Next up's Bizarro, which is the same ride as Scream, except it runs a lot better, and it's got all this theming, all these effects. As you can see here, there's this nice mist effect in the interlocking corkscrews, which look awesome. There's also some fire effects coming out of the dive loop. Just looks like a lot of fun for sure. Yeah, but it's the same layout as Scream. It's definitely forceful, but it's really just all inversions. So yeah, and obviously I didn't mention it. Scream's a parking lot coaster. I've ridden it, kind of weak, kind of lame. Anyway, next up, Kraken. This one, I feel like, I don't see what makes it so good. I've heard that this has got a little bit rough lately, but I don't know. Some people have said, gosh, that's got rough, like right after riding. It's got a layout kind of similar to Medusa's. You know, the loop, dive loop, zero roll, and a club roll instead of the sea serpent roll. And might I add, Medusa is the only coaster by being out with the sea serpent roll, and I think only 5 coasters have a sea serpent roll, so there's that. Pretty cool. And this one, instead of the corkscrews after the mid-course break run, it is a loop and then a corkscrew. And it looks pretty good and pretty intense. Nice pacing, goes ahead to the mid-course break run, which blows. But yeah, that's Kraken. And not to mention, you're right next to that lake there. So that's pretty sweet. Next up, Superman Krypton coaster. I've ridden this one. This one has only 6 inversions, not the 7 in the previous 4. It's lacking the dive loop, which is honestly just a filler version if you ask me. I don't think much of dive loops. The only good part about them is the intensity pulling out of them, but it isn't as good as just a regular loop. Anyway, the loop picture there is it was the largest loop in America until Full Throttle. I've ridden both of those. Wow, how cool is that to say? Great setting though. As you can see, it's right by the quarry wall at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas, and man, looks great. It was intense. I wouldn't say it was intense. It wasn't as intense as Scream, I don't think. It was all right. And as you can see, it's kind of the layout's pretty unique. It does a turnaround into the drop, the loop, and then there's this weird helix on top of the quarry wall. It's pretty slow. It's not intense at all, but it's cool to interact with the terrain for sure, just like Iron Rattler, which is actually awesome. But yeah, so that's Superman. Next up, I seriously think this is the best Floorless coaster. It's Superman Atracción de Acero or something like that. It's basically just Superman Ride of Steel or Attraction of Steel. And man, it looks great. Seriously. The drop is not curved, so you're going to get airtime in the back row, which I'm sure it's there. It's similar to Raging Bull's drop, really, when you think about it. And Apollo's Chariot, sure. It's got still a pretty normal layout, except the dive loop is an Immelman, and instead of the mid-course break run, this is a nice airtime hill, which actually delivers with airtime. It's probably better than Hydra's. It looks to be a lot more sustained, and that looks pretty nice. I gotta cough again. I'm a little bit sick right now. I'm sorry. And then there's just the like a corkscrew, which you can see there. Nothing to say. I've heard it isn't as forceful as the others though, which is interesting. I guess it's because it's a little bit newer than like Superman, the other Superman, but just because there's that airtime hill instead of the brakes, there's some really good pacing on this ride because of it. So that's why those are my main reasons why. You got the straight drop, you got the 2 airtime hills, and no block brakes, which makes for some nice pacing. So yeah, that's what I gotta say. I mean, it's got all 7 inversions there, so done. And actually, I think the Immelman is stronger than a dive loop too. So there you go. That's my reasoning. That's the video. Pardon the interruptions. It's me coughing, but I don't know. I have a headache right now. But yeah, that was the video. Thanks for watching, guys. See you later.